Okay. Immigration has become sort of a dodgy subject in today's politics, but right as of now, the federal government has the legal power to enforce U.S. immigration laws, but it can be assisted by state governments in order to assist in immigration regulation and enforcement of those laws. A fair amount of states have wanted more control over immigration laws and enforcement of those laws because they feel as though the federal government isn't doing an adequate job of it. And in the Immigration and Nationality Act, in Section 287, the provision authorizes the director of ICE to enter into agreements with state and local law enforcement agencies to permit designated officers to perform immigration law and enforcement functions, which would give the states more power. The federal government, on the other hand, wants to maintain jurisdiction over immigration, although they are not opposed to allowing state authorities to further enforce federal immigration laws as long as it doesn't interfere with the enforcement done by the federal government. The subject of immigration isn't very well addressed in the Constitution, but based off of many factors, including what is stated in the Constitution, the federal government should have the power to make laws regarding immigration because what America needs is not state-by-state policies, but a comprehensive federal solution to the immigration problem. So immigration in the Constitution. The issue of immigration is addressed twice in the Constitution, once in Article 1, Section 8, and another in Article 2, Section 1. In Article 1, the Constitution grants Congress the responsibility to establish a uniform rule of naturalization, so they are able to determine how immigrants can become citizens. And in Article 2 of the Constitution, it basically just says that an immigrant can have any job except for the office of president. So given that the federal government is granted the power to determine the laws put in place for acquiring citizenship into the U.S., according to the necessary and proper clause, or the last clause, enforcement of these laws and further requirements of immigrants should also be seen as an implied power. Immigration is a growing issue which has developed far out of the abilities of state governments. So in order to adapt to this matter, it would make the most sense for the federal government to establish and enforce laws regarding it, especially since they have the enumerated power of determining citizenship. And although states are able to assist in immigration regulation and enforcement, the US Constitution includes a supremacy clause which would prevent the state laws from interfering with immigration enforcement done by the federal government. Immigration is also a foreign issue rather than a domestic issue, and since states only have internal powers and the federal government is given the power over foreign policies, immigration laws shouldn't be under the jurisdiction of the states. In Article 13 of the Constitution, it gives everyone the right to freedom of movement and residence within the border of each state and the right to leave a country, but it doesn't make any mention of reserve powers when it comes to handling the U.S., handling entrance into the U.S. So giving the federal government control over immigration wouldn't obstruct the constitutional rights of states. And if the states had the power to make laws regarding immigration, the difference in laws between the states would cause the rate of immigration in each state to differ, causing because some states would have stricter immigration laws, it would cause both documented and undocumented immigrants to flood into states with more lax immigration laws, which could cause overpopulation in those states. But with a federal jurisdiction of immigration laws, the immigration process would run more smoothly and effectively and would even out the distribution of immigrants. This is a chart of the laws enacted, the percentage of laws enacted in 2019 over immigration. And as you can see, the immigration laws that have been enacted under the federal government follow the Bill of Rights and are even protecting the rights of immigrants even further, which proves the competence of the federal government even more. 20% of these laws are budget and appropriation laws, which authorize funds for purposes including immigrant integration, English literacy classes, and migrant and refugee services. 19% of these laws went towards legislation related to law enforcement, such as communicating with federal immigration agencies, complying with immigration detainers, or certification of visas and providing other legal services. And 12% of these laws dealt with education, addressing immigration and residency requirements for access to higher education and in-state tuition or financial assistance at educational institutions. These laws don't hinder American-born citizens whatsoever, but instead provide the needed services for immigrants, and in a way are just an attempt to level out the playing field. Under the jurisdiction of the federal government, it would display a marble cake federalism because they work with states to enforce these laws and interact cooperatively and collectively to solve common problems. And they're just working towards the benefit of the state rather than some sort of selfish reason. It is given that the federal government determines how citizenship is acquired, as it is stated in the Constitution, but some argue that the states should be in charge of immigration because the federal government is not serious about enforcing the immigration laws. That is why Arizona made it a crime to be in the state without proper immigration papers, and it required police to check the immigration status of anyone they arrest if they had reasonable suspicion the person is not legally there. That law is just mean-spirited because it gives police officers reason to act discriminatory against Hispanics or anyone that has reasonable suspicion, including those who are, in fact, American citizens. This just shows the selfishness of states and how the laws they create for immigration could hinder the rights of citizens. In the Bill of Rights, it states that everyone is entitled to all rights and freedoms set forth in the Declaration without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, language, birth, or other status. And under the rule of the states, immigrants and anyone who could possibly resemble an immigrant has that right taken away from them. This one law enacted by Arizona led to 5 other states creating similar laws to it. So if states had sole power to enact immigration laws, the issue would only worsen. So my final thoughts on this is that at the moment, the way immigration is being handled is not very satisfactory, but the federal government should still be in charge of determining citizenship and also have the power to make laws regarding immigrants. But states should be able to assist in enforcing these laws as long as they work alongside the federal government and not overturning any federal laws and policies. Okay. How do I...